It was a cold evening in London when Jamal Carter, a 17-year-old black teen, walked home from his part-time job holding a paper bag of groceries for his mother. The orange glow of the streetlights flickered over the wet pavement, and every step echoed softly in the quiet street. Suddenly, flashing blue lights painted the walls, and a police car pulled up beside him. Out stepped Officer Bradley, tall, pale-faced, with a smirk that wasn't friendly at all. "Where you coming from, boy?" he asked, his tone sharp like broken glass. Jamal froze, confused but calm, replying softly that he had just finished work. Bradley's eyes scanned the bag suspiciously, as if a few apples and bread were stolen treasure. "Don't lie to me," he sneered, moving closer. Jamal could feel the fear crawl up his spine, but he stood still, clutching the bag tighter. A few people across the street slowed down, pretending not to see. The cold air felt heavier. Bradley grabbed Jamal's wrist and pushed him against the police car. "You think you can walk around here like you own the place?" he muttered. Jamal tried to speak, but the words drowned in his throat. Every sound of that moment, the rustle of the paper bag, the hum of traffic, the hiss of rain, felt like a cruel soundtrack. Tears strung Jamal's eyes as he whispered, "I didn't do anything." But the officer's smirk only grew wider. For him, power was a game, and humiliation was victory. Jamal's heart pounded. He remembered his mother's words, "Never raise your voice, son. They only see what they want to see." A small crowd began to gather. Someone recorded on their phone. A woman shouted, "He's just a kid." But Bradley turned around and barked, "Step back." His arrogance filled the street like poison. Then, as the tension reached its peak, another police car arrived. The door opened, and a man stepped out wearing a black coat with silver stripes, Chief Oliver Grant. His eyes immediately narrowed at the sight of Jamal pinned against the car. "Bradley," he said coldly, "what do you think you're doing?" The crowd fell silent. For the first time, Bradley's smirk faltered. Jamal looked up, his face wet with tears and rain. The chief's gaze shifted to the boy, then to the phone cameras, then back to his officer. "Release him. Now." Bradley hesitated, but his hand trembled as he stepped back. The moment felt endless, the air, the silence, the shame. The chief placed a firm hand on Jamal's shoulder and said softly, "You're safe now, son." Jamal didn't know whether to cry or thank him, but he nodded slowly, breathing again for the first time in minutes. The chief turned to the crowd and said, "Record everything. No one hides the truth anymore." And as Jamal looked at the blinking red lights of the phones, he thought maybe this night would change everything. For the first time, the world might actually listen. The night after the incident, Jamal couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Officer Bradley's cold smirk and felt the heavy grip on his wrist. The words, "You're safe now," from Chief Grant echoed in his head, but his heart wasn't sure it believed them. Outside, the city was silent, yet his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The video had gone viral overnight, millions of views, hundreds of angry comments, and hashtags calling for justice for Jamal Carter. People he didn't even know were speaking his name. But inside the police station, things were far from calm. Chief Grant sat in his office, watching the same video on a big screen, his face tight with anger. He knew what it meant. The department's image was burning, and one of his own men had lit the fire. Officer Bradley stood outside his door, sweating, pretending confidence he didn't feel. When the chief called him in, the silence was heavier than any punishment. "You humiliated a boy," Chief Grant said coldly. "A citizen. And you did it wearing my badge." Bradley tried to defend himself, saying Jamal looked suspicious, that he thought he saw a weapon. But Grant slammed his fist on the desk. "You saw his skin, not a weapon," he shouted. The walls seemed to shake. Bradley's voice cracked as he muttered, "It's not like that, Chief." But both men knew it was exactly like that. Meanwhile, Jamal sat at home with his mother, a gentle woman named Elaine Carter, who held his trembling hands. Reporters were outside, and neighbors peeked through their curtains. Jamal didn't want fame, he wanted peace. "They think I'm brave," he said softly, "but I was just scared." Elaine smiled sadly, brushing his hair. "Bravery isn't about not being scared, son. It's about standing tall when fear tries to break you." Across town, Chief Grant made a decision that could destroy his career. He suspended Officer Bradley and ordered an internal investigation. The department whispered about it, half angry, half relieved. But something darker moved beneath the surface. Late that night, as the chief left the building, a black car followed him slowly. Inside, two men in suits spoke quietly. "Grant's making enemies," one said. "If he keeps digging, he'll find more than he wants." The other nodded, watching the chief's car fade into the fog. At the same time, Jamal received an anonymous message on social media. "Be careful who you trust. This isn't over." His fingers froze on the phone screen. He didn't know if it was a threat or a warning, but deep down, he felt the story wasn't finished. The fear was back, quiet, crawling, alive. Somewhere in the dark, someone wanted the truth buried again. But this time, Jamal promised himself he wouldn't stay silent. The world was finally listening. And if you believe truth should never be hidden, subscribe, because what happens next will shake more than one life. The morning after Jamal received the anonymous message, fear settled like a heavy fog in his chest. Every shadow in his house seemed alive. Every knock at the door made him flinch. His mother, Elaine Carter, tried to comfort him, holding his hands tightly and whispering, "We are safe, Jamal. Don't let fear rule you." But even her warmth couldn't chase away the sense that someone was watching. Across town, Chief Oliver Grant reviewed security footage from outside Jamal's house, his jaw tight with concern. Officer Bradley's suspension hadn't ended the danger. It seemed to have unleashed it. Inside the department, whispers spread about Bradley's colleagues who quietly supported his actions, creating a hidden network that threatened anyone seeking justice. Grant called in his trusted team, insisting on round-the-clock protection for Jamal and his family. Meanwhile, Bradley, humiliated and desperate, started making secret calls to old contacts, warning them to cover up evidence, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. He knew Grant wouldn't stop until the truth was exposed, and he would do anything to protect himself. Back in Jamal's room, the teen scrolled through social media, reading messages from strangers who stood with him, sending words of hope and solidarity. But one message stood out, a picture of him leaving the store the night Officer Bradley stopped him, accompanied by the words, "You're next if you speak too loud." Jamal's hands trembled, and his mother held him close again, tears streaming down her face. That evening, Chief Grant visited their home, walking quietly into the living room. "You have courage," he said to Jamal. "But courage without caution can be dangerous. We must be careful now." Jamal nodded, understanding the weight of what had begun. As the city lights blinked outside the window, shadows moved along the alleyways, silent but watching. Jamal felt the chill of fear like ice on his spine, yet a spark of determination ignited inside him. He would not let this darkness win. Later that night, the phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message appeared. "Bradley is planning something tonight. Watch closely." Jamal looked at his mother and whispered, "We need to trust Chief Grant. He won't let us fall." The chief, standing firm at the doorway, nodded. "No one gets hurt if we stay smart," he said, but his eyes betrayed the tension he felt. Outside, the rain poured, drumming against the roof like a warning. Inside, hearts raced, minds calculated, and every second felt like a test of who could survive the night. Somewhere, danger was closing in, but Jamal knew one thing: the truth had power, and the world was already watching. If you believe bravery isn't about being fearless, but about standing up despite the fear, subscribe. Because what happens next could change everything forever. The night was heavy with rain, and Jamal Carter sat by the window, listening to every sound, every drop hitting the roof like a warning. His mother, Elaine Carter, held his hand tightly, whispering that everything would be okay, but even she looked worried. Across town, Chief Oliver Grant coordinated with trusted officers, setting a careful plan to catch Officer Bradley before he could do anything reckless. Bradley, desperate and cornered, moved through the city streets, unaware that every step was being watched. The tension built like a storm about to break, each second stretching endlessly. Jamal's phone buzzed again, a message from the unknown sender. Now. He didn't know if it was a warning or encouragement, but he knew the moment had come. Chief Grant arrived at Jamal's home, assuring both him and Elaine that they would face this together. Outside, Bradley approached, planning to intimidate Jamal one last time, believing no one could stop him. But as he raised his hand to shout, headlights cut across the street and police cars surrounded him. Grant stepped forward, calm but firm, and said, "It's over, Bradley. Step away." The officer froze, seeing the walls of justice closing in, realizing his arrogance had led him here. Jamal, watching from the porch, felt his heart pound. Fear still lingered, but courage had replaced it. The crowd that had gathered outside, following the news, erupted in quiet relief as Bradley was arrested. Grant looked at Jamal and Elaine, saying, "You stood tall when fear tried to break you. That makes you stronger than any threat." Jamal nodded, tears running down his face, feeling both fear and triumph mix inside him. Days later, the city held a peaceful gathering for Jamal, celebrating courage and justice, reminding everyone that speaking up can change the world. Chief Grant was praised for doing what was right, even when it was dangerous. Elaine hugged her son tightly, whispering, "You showed the world who you are, Jamal. Never forget that." Jamal smiled, finally feeling safe and proud, knowing that while darkness may come, light always has the power to break through. And as people shared their stories online, Jamal realized he wasn't alone. Others would stand up too, because silence only strengthens injustice. If you believe that standing up for the truth matters, that courage can inspire change, subscribe. Because every voice, like Jamal's, can make a difference. And for Jamal Carter, this was just the beginning of a future where fear would never control him again.